We began Lent with dust. We took the ashes to confess our kinship with the world of dust. With that smudge of dust, we declare to the world that we are human. And carrying that mark on our foreheads and seeing it on the foreheads of others is an admission that human is what we are. That bit of dust simply stands for truthfulness, divested of our illusions about ourselves and about others. Yes, that woman, that man you are in love with, who is the romance of your life, is also marked by dust, lest we forget, human. It happens all the time in the world of agreeing or disagreeing. We love the Pope when he agrees with us, and then we don't know what to do with the disappointment when all of a sudden he says something we don't agree with. We don't know how to hold that information into a both and about a leader. We think they should always be agreeable. I'm not sure that is what is in us, or why even that's in us, but for the dust of our humanity. And then there are the crazies. Every one of us is crazy. I'm looking at crazy right now. So are you. Every single one of us is crazy in one way or another. And by crazy, I mean in some way we get in our own way and we trip over our own feet. And we get in the way of what we want the most, which is love. Yes, in one way or another, we are all crazy, human. And yet, every once in a while, we get a glimpse. We see someone for the good person that they are. They do something for others or for us that is stunningly loving. And we see through to their divinity, their goodness. Like those three apostles that Jesus was transfigured in front of in this gospel today. His face shined like the sun, they write. Indeed. It is also true that every once in a while we get a glimpse that is also true that we have uncommon strength and ability, sometimes we didn't even know we had, and some remarkable talent that the world needs. Happy is the one who can hang in there with the other, even when they're stumbling over their own feet, over their own dust. Happy even then who can see both and still embrace, and still accept, and still love, and build from there. And happy is the one who can accept that in themselves as well as in others. Most of you have likely heard by now that this is my last year here at the CSC as a leader. We have to retire at 75, and I'll be 73 my next birthday. And I moved it up a bit, not because I want to leave. I moved it up a bit for love of you, because with this All Things New initiative that I'm sure you're all familiar with by now, almost all St. Louis priests, or a remarkable number of them, will be free for transfers. Because of the closures of so many parishes, there'll be a lot of priests up for grabs, so to speak. And so it's just the right thing to do. If I love you, this is the time to do it when you have the best shot at getting a good man to be your chaplain here. It's the best for the CSC as far as I can see it. And some of you have known me and been with me in this community, in this mission that we are about here for some over 30 years now. There's probably little at this point that you would be surprised about me, that would surprise you about me, strengths and weaknesses, sane and crazy, and yet, knowing my crazies, knowing my weaknesses, bumping into them yourself over the years, all these years, you've let me lead you. That's a remarkable gift for which I could never thank you enough. You let me lead you in my own imperfections. And they're real. They're real to me, so I'm sure they're real to you. You continued in community with me. Lots of you have. It is your acceptance of both in me that helps me accept both in me. And it's true in your marriages too, isn't it? It's true all the time that your partner is both human and divine. And in your friendships too. As we get older, you and I, as we get older, we see it in our parents as well. As even our parents are crazy in some ways, and weak, and compromised. And sometimes the first time we see that, the first time that hits us between the eyes, the first time we admit that our parents are not perfect, it's almost like we're scandalized by that, and we don't want to tell other people about it, even though it's left its mark on us. Tell me, do you need your friends to be perfect? Do you even act like you need your friends to be perfect? Do you need your parents to be perfect? Do you need your priest to be perfect? To meet all your expectations? To rise to every occasion? Do you need your pope? Do you need your president to be perfect? Do I need you to be perfect? Yes, your face will shine like the sun on any given day, and maybe just that day, or maybe just a part-time of that day, probably not even the whole day, but shine, shine they will, shine they will. And that's what Jesus saw in his students, or what Jesus' students, rather, saw in him when all of a sudden his face shined like the sun. They saw love in him. They saw total love in him. They saw unconditional love in him, which is nothing less than God in him. And so the conversations began that could this human be God too? They were in awe and they were in wonder at his goodness and how good he was at loving. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't able to be seen that way. All of a sudden, he wasn't shining for him. The gospel story tells us with this kind of abrupt thing, well, they had all this shine and they fell down to their knees when they got up. It's just Jesus. All of a sudden, that gospel of the Transfiguration turns on a simple statement that after that shining, it was just Jesus. The gospel story tells us it wasn't long before they ran into him just being another human being like them. It says in the story, he went from his face shining like that to, oh, it's just him, the carpenter's son, just like us, same weaknesses we all have. Who knows, maybe it wasn't long after that face shining like the sun that he accidentally let out a big burp or a toot. Yes, Jesus tooted. Dust, human. Maybe he just had to go to the bathroom and forgot to flush, or got impatient and yelled at one of his employees or one of his students. Who thinks of the Son of God as crabby? You see, the light goes on and the light goes off. Some things turn us on about somebody, and some things turn us off about that same person. Do you know you are human and divine? And by divine, I mean that each of you, your own self, carries the imago Dei, the image and the likeness of love itself, of perfect love. It's in you. It's in you. That wholeness of love is already in you, imprinted in you from the very beginning. As soon as the dust was gathered, it was breathed into your being. And it's not going to go away, no matter how hard you try. It's not going to go away. It's imprinted into your soul, you see? And it's trying to get out. Hopefully, over the years, and assisted by communities like this, that divinity in you does come out more and more over the years. All because of people shining all around you this very second, who are trying to be good like you and weigh in on the good side of us, weigh in on the divine. They want to shine too, you see. And that's so for everybody you meet on the streets of St. Louis, at the soccer game last night, wherever you are. They want to shine too. And if you're with them long enough, it won't be long before you see them shine, but it also won't be long before you're tripping over their weaknesses. One does not cancel the other, you see. The human person is both and, human and divine, divine and dust, finite and infinite, acting good and acting bad, edifying and disappointing, uplifting and off-putting. One of the things that's hard about being a leader is that people do come up against this all the time in us, and they're right to point it out, but they might not be right to give up on us. Happy is the one who is not scandalized by the imperfections of another, even your own spouse. If you've known me long enough, as I said, you know my imperfections. What I think is amazing about this book, the Bible, is that it seems to go out of its way to make sure we know that these people, these leaders, these friends, these spouses, these kids are human. They're dust as well as divine. And by human, what do I mean? I mean imperfect, and they're going to respond wrongly sometimes, and they're going to be ignorant and not understand and judgmental, and they still need to grow just like everybody else. All the leaders in the scripture, the writers went out of their ways to make sure we see that they're weak. They failed. They're imperfect. I could name one Bible passage after another where Jesus himself responded imperfectly. And the Bible goes out of its way to make sure we know. And if you doubt that, Google it. So, how do we relate to somebody who's both human and divine? How do we relate between weakness and talent? How do we relate between somebody desiring to love and somebody failing to love? Can we hold in our embrace those tensions in loving a human being who's also divine? How do we relate to somebody who can act so good and so loving one minute, to whom we can feel so close, and who wakes up crabby the next morning and bites our head off? How do we do that? We will do fine, and we will love both sides of them when we do it for ourselves, when we love both sides of our own self, when we let ourselves be both and. And so this very human, sometimes way too human priest says, thank you. Thank you so much for loving both in me and allowing me to be your priest and also to be human. And so will the next one.